Sharjah Film Platform. My name is Yazan Ghazawi. I am head of film at SAE Institute Dubai. It's my pleasure to be moderating today's panel focusing on two of the most prominent films in our lineup for this year in the context of writers and directors' experiences during their creation. So You Will Die at 20 is widely credited as being a watershed moment in Sudanese film history. It brings the story of 19-year-old Muzamil, played by Mustafa Shehata, who was told as an infant that he would die on the day he turned 20. The film received the Lion of the Future Award at the Venice Film Festival in 2019. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming with us the writer of the film, Mr. Yousef Ibrahim. Welcome, Mr. Yousef.
مرحبا أستاذ مرحبا.
أهلا. 27th of Shabaan is one of the first Saudi short films to be streamed on Netflix. The film follows Mohammed and Nof, who go on a date, an act prohibited in the kingdom in the early 2000s. We also have the pleasure to be hosting the director of the film, Mohammed Salman. Welcome, Mohammed.
Hello.
Okay. So Yousef, if I could start with you, we're eager to know where this story came from and what your experience was as a writer prior to this film, and in a country that has a modest history regionally with the international film industry. How did this film come about?
I will start with my previous experience prior to this movie. Actually, prior to this, I did a feature movie called Hilm. It was a long time back. It was like 2003, 4, I'm not sure. And a couple of short films also. So that was my experience, and I was doing a lot of workshops and other things. So, and part of that, one of my project in short movies was a project with Amjad himself. It's called Tina. It was in 2008, I believe. And since that time, we are trying to do another thing. We thought that we have bigger idea, we have something more special, and also we have chemistry that we can work together in a feature. Since that time, we're trying to find a story. Actually, Amjad came with a lot of stories, and mostly I was rejecting all these stories because it was not convincing me that this should be the first feature for Amjad. And then he came up with this something he wrote in the plane. He was coming to Dubai, and when he landed, he just called me and said, there is a story from Hammour, and I know Hammour. He's a well-known novelist from Sudan, and he sent me that thing, and I wrote it. Then I just get shocked. I just haunted by that story, and I wanted to speak about that. Actually, previously in my short movies and even my and personal, the idea or the concept of about death and life actually was, it is a long idea or a long thought in my mind. I'm not sure why, but it's still haunting me somehow. So, and it's haunting everybody in a way, the idea of death and life. So I thought this is what I can do. I read a lot about it. I've seen a lot of it. So, and you have also your own experience of that death and life. So I thought this should be the idea of our first feature with Amjad. And then we started. Actually, we wrote it. We started writing it. I started writing it, most of the drafts in Dubai, and then we met together and we started doing the drafts, draft after draft, and finally we found that's it. Let us go and shoot it.
Yeah, and just to kind of continue on this point. So did you feel that it was, and we'll come later to speak about the challenges of of shooting this film and of the actual production process and your involvement in this, but did you feel that there was an appetite to find, for the people around you, for a Sudanese film, did you feel there was an appetite to hear this kind of story, and was there an appetite to see this kind of story on the screen?
Well, I'm not sure that was the engine that makes me to go and write it. It's just something, it comes inside me that I need to write this story. So just haunting me, and I was not thinking that, and this is happening to all my movies. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I'm not thinking was who will see that. I'm thinking that I love it. I like it. I can write about it. Then,
Yeah.
but and also I believe that if it concerns me, so it might concern somebody else. You
Yeah.
just even the somebody else or the other group is a shorter group. Okay, then we share that story together. But I was not thinking and that the film will boom. The
No, I
way.
understand, but I guess my question has a bit more to do with, the audiences in Sudan, like your home, the audiences at home, and
Yeah.
their kind of
See,
willingness to look at, films and to look at
see,
stories.
see. From my, I am not a Sudanese. I am not from a Sudan origin or whatever. But then, because for me was it's not only the Sudanese audience. It's should go to everybody. I mean, it should touch anybody anywhere. So that was the approach. I was not working on the question, do the Sudanese will see this movie, but also Emiratis will see these movies, Lebanese will see these movies, Jordanian will see these movies, mostly in the Arab region. Is it any, they are related to that story in somehow? That was my most then. For me, the Sudanese idea was, okay, it was very important for Amjad. For me was a story about a human being, a story about that concerns everybody. That was my approach, mostly, and it was not like I'm looking for a group of people that will see my movie. I was looking for a movie that touched somebody somewhere, even in Siberia.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, this speaks, I suppose, to the wider appeal, of cinema, as human stories, and this is something that also relates to your film, Muhammad. And if I could just come to you and ask you to share your experience with us of bringing to life this human story that maybe deals with a subject that is fairly, taboo. What was your experience?
In my case, I was like, I was writing another script. Then I thought, we're here in Saudi Arabia. We just, I mean, maybe even in the Gulf, we just started and we have too many stories that we didn't tell. And I was like, questioning the change that we're going through in the country, and I felt a story that happened not a while ago in 2005 will look for us as a foreign and alien as today. And that was I think, that was my huge interest, is like how much we changed. And in that story, I'm not dealing with like the laws or why isn't it why that was difficult to meet a boy that loves a girl to meet in the society. I was talking about the social structure, the social pressure that everybody like subscribe to automatically. And it's not right or wrong, it's just that's how it is. And this film, out of my 4 short films, was the easiest story that I was trying to tell, a simple story, the easiest thing that I wrote actually. I always write short films that I think they had, I would say, a potential to be a longer feature movie or a series. It's like I have too many things in there, and that was one of the challenges that I want to overcome. Is like, don't overcomplicate it. Tell a story, focus on the feelings journey. That those how did it feel in 2005 to just meet a girl and a boy meets in a public place, and how is it very normal now comparing to that time. So I wrote that. I remember when I was actually writing the other film was called Curtain, and it had similar themes in terms of the veil and the social pressure around. And then I was telling my friend about, I was really focused in one feelings. It's like how would it feel, and that's how the film started. How would it feel, or how would it feel for the girl to walk the first time to see that guy for the first time in a public place? What she's gonna do? And that's how I was telling my friend, and he encouraged me to write it down. And I actually wrote it in the week before Ramadan, around the date of 27th Shabaan, and we shot it in Ramadan. That was really fast. It's like 2 weeks in writing and 3 days or 2 days in execution. And in less than 1 month, I got a short film. Not comparing to my other short films that I would work for more than maybe.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this was something that you wrote in 2 weeks' time. And then, but I suppose that, the story kind of comes from your own personal experience, or is it a viewpoint? Is it a story of somebody you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's the story happens in my generation time, and so I am fully aware of how even the locations, the places, the restaurant that I used to go to this exact restaurants with my family when I was a kid. And the funny thing about this restaurant, it didn't change. It's just it stayed the same, and that was so it's not it's really like those 2 weeks or 3 weeks was an actual work, because I would go to the location, visit it, rewrite multi drafts. What usually happens in a year, you write a draft and you leave it, then you come back to it, and you have a space. But that one, there was a lot of work in there, but in that very short period of time. And yeah, it came from all of the experiences. You mentioned about like how would it feel for others to watch it, and what I loved about people who watched it, they felt even the dialogue, even the whole situation happened to them. And a couple of people told me like it literally happened this way. It literally, I said that, she said that, in that sense. So it's really, it spoke to local audience, I would say. And I actually watched one movie about dating, and I felt it was written and done for not the local audience. It was not much of believable, and maybe that was one of the things that I took in mind is I wanted to be believable and real. I would say authentic to the local environment and audience.
Well, this is something actually, this leads me, and thank you for that. This leads me to my next question, and this is something I wanted to address to both you and to Yousef, which is that, so both of your films have received international recognition, or acclaim outside of your home countries. But one thing that I wanted to address is, do you feel as filmmakers that there is a certain genre or a certain type of film or a certain style of story that people expect from this part of the world? And do you feel, just to kind of further that people expect for people from this part of the world to tell us a certain kind of story? And do you think that there are some people who meet this expectation rather than choose to tell the story that they want to tell? So Yousef, if you could maybe share your experience on this.
Yes. I think most of how I say it, I think people expecting kind of stories, yes, some sort of stories from this region, yes. And I think if we make a list, me and Mohammed will come to the same list. I know that, and even if you talk about, for example, let's say what's the most common woman, for example. If you talk about women, so there is some ideas, if I say cliches, they have to see it, or they're expecting to see it from your movie. And the thing is that most of these things, maybe it was right in some period of time, but like Mohammed said, now our society is here in Gulf, for example, it is keep changing. Like now in Saudi Arabia, 5 years only, things has changed a lot. So you cannot say the same story. Actually, yesterday I was doing pitching in Sharjah Foundation about my next movie, and I wrote it a long time, and now I'm writing it again. And somebody asked me, what's the difference? I said 10 years. 10 years is a big difference between my story at that time and now. So what I'm trying to say is that, yes, they're expecting a story, but we should not, I think, eat that bait. We should not go to that trap. I think this is a trap.
I totally agree with you. And I'll just pass the mic on to Mohammed in a second, but I was going to say that it's easy for us to say, okay, we won't eat that bait. I want to tell my own story. But at the same time, if you do eat the bait, then maybe this will open the door for funding. It will open the door for more opportunities than if you don't eat the bait.
It is a race between being authentic and honest, and between being okay, or between chasing some, I don't know, being international, and I'm not sure. But for me, it's mostly, like I said before, I'm not looking for being yes, any artist wants his movie to go as far as they can. But for me, being authentic, being right, being honest, and tell our own story in our own way. I think this is the right way. This is the right road to drive through. It's not to give. It's not like he's a customer. I don't feel that he's a customer. He's an audience. So I should, when he's coming to see my story, this is my story. I'm telling him my story. So he has the right to live it, or to hate it. But to tell me how to tell my story, I think this is like we are switching roles.
Yeah. I'll move on to you, Mohammed, to give us your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, just like Yousef said, what I would like maybe recommend in that situation is like a lot of stories in their basic way, they are universal. It's like you will die at 20. It's a death and it's a death and life situation. And I love the movie, and I thought it speaks for everyone. But there's little details and cultural stuff that you get through it, and you automatically learn it as a viewer, and that's what makes the film authentic. And that's I think the if you don't deal with cinema as a market, that's how it is. It's you go through the story and you pick up the hints of the culture and you actually enjoy it. I would say 10 times what you already know, right? And in 27 Shabaan, it's a love story, but there is the conflict and the circumstances is very unique to that area and time. So if you push all this away and you make a Hollywood movie, I mean, you can choose to go to Hollywood and direct an American story, an American movie that can be meant to be marketed and get revenue from all over the world. But what I would say, and I think it's really changing now with our access, like the streaming services, for example, and when Parasite won the award, is people now got introduced to the world cinema, and I think world cinema didn't have a good portion of place in the cinema market. Now it's actually getting it, maybe not through international theaters, but even in the streaming services. So what I would say is, don't make a movie, as I would say, with agenda of pleasing a certain people. I totally agree with Yousef. If you make a movie that it really speaks to you and it makes you interested, and that's my huge motives in short movies, especially in my short movies, I didn't worry about budgeting much and how would it go. It's a short movie, it's an art piece, I want to do it. I want it to be viewed and featured, of course, but if I put my main focus on that, I'll lose the sight of the artistic motives that you have.
Yeah, of course.
When Yousef said, make a movie and there's a slice of people that share your interest, and like what happened in You Will Die at 20 movie, it got the attention of the Arab world and the international, which I love. I really hope that, because there's a lot of great films in the Arab world that I really wish for a way to market those in the Arab world. Like, because we don't even watch much of the Arab cinema because it's not marketed, or it's not sold out in areas. There's no way for access for you. But streaming services are changing the game.
Well, I mean, this was actually my, part of what I was going to ask you next. You keep predicting my questions, Ahmed. What I was going to say is, and this is for if we take, for example, your film, Yousef, which is a film that won a big international award. This is a huge achievement, right? But the reality is, what is the reception of the audience going to be in our part of the world to a film like this and to an achievement like this? And how does this translate? I mean, I think we've established for both of you that within the context of the creative process, you want to tell the story that you want to tell regardless of anything. But ultimately, once the film has been made and the film is now successful on an international level, you kind of want your audience at home to appreciate and to watch this film and to be able to be exposed to your film and similar films that are independent outside of the commercial content that they're accustomed to seeing at the cinema, that they're accustomed to seeing even on streaming platforms. The majority, and I think your film, Muhammad, is an exception, of course, but the majority of the Arabic content that we're seeing even on streaming platforms is commercial content that is very similar to content that we saw or that we see on TVs, previously and so on. So I guess my question is, how do you see the space, be it on streaming platforms or at the cinema, for your kind of independent, let's say independent, award-winning international film that is part of, we can call the cinema of the world, even though I don't like that, and this is not a popular way to call it, but I think you understand what I mean. Where do you see your films in this space in terms of a local audience?
Well, you are now presenting a dilemma. I wish I can.
Well, I mean, the idea is to discuss it, right?
Yes, I wish that I can solve that dilemma, that I want to do my movie, but also I want it to be well seen and well appreciated. I'm not sure how but it was well actually received in by Sudanese audience, especially here in Dubai. We make like 5 screenings. It was full. For local audience, it's only for people that they are interested in movies and in art. So, and I believe that it will also be received well in Sudan when it will be commercially, because of some nostalgia on the movie, but I'm not sure that if it's in other countries, in other Arab world, how it will be received. I'm not sure, and I don't know. I don't have an answer for this, but I would like everybody to see my movie. And like Muhammad said, and I will take that quote from him, that now the streaming changed the game. So now also we have another window for our people to show, because also one of the problem is that the distribution. Actually, now this a Sudanese movie, you will not see it in Egypt. For example, you will not see it in Saudi Arabia, you will not see it in other countries. So it's only but now and I think the movie is already there's a negotiation to be streamed in Netflix. So that's another window for people to see. Now I believe that the ball in their yard. So either they want to see it, it's there in their home. More than this week, I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, I think you raised an important issue of distribution, and that's something I'll come to a little bit later as well. But Mohammed, do you want to share your take on this dilemma that we won't be able to solve today?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a solution for it, but I would share my experience. Like whenever I go to Arab screenings, and I find that our response to the Arab cinema is very strong. It's like, because it's there's things that little inside jokes in our cultures. There is little things that to make us respond differently to any another movie from the world, right? So, and I always think that if there was, I think, for example, Parasite was successful, as if you want to use it, because it had a distribution company that was willing to market it and take the risk. In our case, when I watch movies, sometimes I wouldn't understand the whole dialogue, and I would wish for an Arabic subtitle. And that was like one of the barriers that we can break, even though the story, the whole thing, I totally easily understand it because we share the backgrounds, the cultures. And one of the screenings in Los Angeles, actually, it was very interesting. We watched 5 short films. Each one had the like killing the cheap sacrifice. Each one of them had the same moment, and you might call it cliche, but each director used it in a very brilliant way. And for the fifth time that we see a scene where they kill the sheep, we all laugh because like we've seen 5, and because it's a different case, you'll see 5, and that can tell you that we have our world that we can share. So when, as an audience, as a consumer, we're very I mean equipped to like it, but there were not much of avenues to go and watch this unless you go to a special screening or if you're very interested in the cinema art. But the filmmaking industry is, I think, is getting started in some regions, like in Saudi Arabia. It just got started, and then I think maybe in the Arab world they're back to it after the digital revolution. So I think, I'm being hopeful for our cinema to be seen and to be accessible as much as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, we mentioned distribution, and one of the examples that we had, previously, I'm sure you're familiar with the Jordanian film Veep, which was nominated for an Academy Award, but then it performed very modestly in the box office regionally, and it was because of this issue of distribution. And I think that, the issue is more. I mean, it did okay, for example, in the Gulf region and in Jordan, obviously, because Jordan was the home country. But you wouldn't imagine when you say, Oscar-nominated film, right? You would think that this means, a substantial amount of attention and a substantial amount of audiences. And I think you're right. The key is maybe developing these spaces that exist in. For art house or art cinema, as you mentioned, and maybe exploring streaming platforms, and that's something that both of you, kind of touched upon. And one thing I want to say also, just before because kind of we've digressed to streaming platforms now. But I would like to know, Yousef, if you could tell us more and share your experience with the process. I mean, you spoke about the process of writing the film. Beyond writing the film, working with your director, the challenges you faced in bringing this story to life, the specific challenges related to this film.
See, like any independent movies, okay, we'll talk up first about the writing. Writing, the challenge is that we both are not very familiar with the environment of the story, because although my director is Sudanese, but he lived his whole life here in Gulf, so he's a Gulf origin. So that was one of the things. But because of we are living in the internet and YouTube era, so we could have actually collect a lot of data through that for that region, geological, historical, people from that region, and we tried to gather it together, at least for the first draft. Then we started to put more meat to that, more flesh to that environment. Then we had, director had 2-3 journeys to that area, and he was sending me footage. So we started, so that was actually, sometimes it was awkward, the moment to building the story. But like you said, our decision was from the first place, we don't want a folklore movie. Actually, there is a lot of Arab films that is more You mentioned Veep.
Yeah.
What's good about Veep? It's not talking about, it's a plot about the young boy. We're following the young boy. We are not following the Bedouin culture or the Bedouin folklore. It's there, but it's a part of the story.
It exists in the background.
Yes,
Yeah.
it exists in the background and it's part of the story. Sometimes it's just coming forward and it's like sometimes it's bothering me, especially in some Arabic movies, some part of Arabic movies, and also in some African movies. It's more folkloric. So that thing we don't want from the beginning. We want a story about this boy. What comes with that, let's take it. What's not coming with that, let's leave it. So we were very, very direct on that. And other than that, than this, like any other independent movies, the funding. It took us like 2 years. We started with Doha Film Festival or Doha Film, what's it called? Doha Film Foundation, something like that.
Film Institute. Yeah.
Institute, yes,
Yeah.
was Doha Al-Aflam. And from that we started, and it took us like more than 2 years to raise the fund. And actually, the moment we decided to start the movie, we didn't receive like 60% of the fund. It's just promises. So we don't know that it will come it will come to reality, or it just will be promises. So that was one of the issues. Sometimes we pay from our pocket to cover some areas, so we'll get the money back in the future. The area itself, the environment, people they're not familiar of this kind of tasks. So if you're coming to a village and you're saying you're shooting a movie, and I remember one time, Amjad told me during the shooting, they just kicked them out from one of the villages. I don't know I don't remember what was the story, but somebody was angry and they just kicked them out from that village. So they made the shooting there, and then they have to do it again. Some logistics in a country that there is no infrastructure in the movie. So, and also the post-production, distribution. Actually, we find the distributor very late, but I think it was a good achievement for the movie. So mostly whatever any independent movies will go through, we went through actually. There is nothing special about that.
Yeah, and no, and I can imagine. I think one thing maybe that sets you apart is that you shot in a place that doesn't have this infrastructure of. I mean, if you shot in Jordan, if you shot maybe in Lebanon or Egypt or somewhere with more established infrastructure for filmmaking, I think this would have been an easier experience, right?
Actually, that film was shooted, and there is another thing is that at that time there is some political problems issued in Sudan, if you remember 2 years back.
Yes.
There's people protesting in the streets, and so the government and the security thing in the country was very hard. So one of the things that how to enter or admit the equipment, heavy equipment inside the country. Okay, so they stayed they just kept it in the custom for a long time, and people waiting, the crews waiting without cameras, without equipment. So that was one of the challenges also.
Yeah. I can imagine. Again, it's you're essentially working in a clean slate, like a place that has no, And moving on to you, Mohammed, and just to speak to you about your short film and short films generally. So as somebody, I'm a writer and director myself, and I've made a few short films, and I know that a short film is usually considered a labor of love. So you make the short film because, as you mentioned earlier, it's an art piece, and you make it because it's a story that you want to tell. But a short film has its own problems because of a number of things. First of all, the limitation on funding and the availability of funding, and it really depends on the kind of genre that you're pursuing. But also beyond the film festival, usually the lifespan of a short film is limited. You go on the festival circuit and that's it. So your experience is different because your film ended up on Netflix, on a streaming platform such as Netflix. Do you feel that there's a place for short films on these platforms going forward? Do you think that the process of distributing short films, of course, being a relative term here, do you think that there's a future in this? And if you could just speak to us about this component of your experience.
As you know, it's like short films. You just said it. I mean, in a very clear way. And short films, people try to find a way to distribute it. There's like a lot of, I would say, platforms that try to make a place for them to be seen. But they proved to be like effective in festivals, right? People would see your work, and you didn't do it maybe to like for the next step, but each short film I was doing kind of enabled me to do something, the next one. And each time I make a movie, because I did the last one, and I met a lot of people, then I formed a new crew or the same crew with the extra people in there, and so on. In my case, it's funny because it's very unusual. Like I made four short films and I sold them all, and that's
Wow.
very unusual. Yeah, even
That's very
first one.
impressive. Mashallah,
Yeah,
that's very impressive.
and I wouldn't say I'm a good businessman at all. It's just that I think I'm one of the guys who started making films in a golden era in Saudi Arabia, where the whole infrastructure is just building up. And those people who started with this, and even in the Gulf, are I mean, they are building up them. They're helping in building up the structure, and this structure is actually giving them opportunities. In my case, the 27th Shabaan was there was a deal between Telfaz 11, the studio that used to make a lot of sketches and films and YouTube, and then they're getting bigger as a studio, or even though they're gonna produce, they just announced a new deal with Netflix. They're gonna produce 8 feature films. And I had a good relationship with them. They actually produced my last short film, Curtain, and then they took 27 Sha'ban as well into distributing this. So I would say, you don't make short film expecting it to be sold or distributed, but seriously, if you make a short film in this business or in this art, people would look at you based on what they have seen you doing. So if they see a short film, they can define, and they like make a short film because you love it, and because it will get you more opportunity to make a bigger concept, maybe with a good budget films in the future. But that's the way it is, even in the countries where they had the cinema for more than 100 years. Like if you make your film inside Sundance, Cannes, you get the attention of because they value you, and those some of those festivals in short films, they wouldn't judge it based on how much it will make or anything. They will look at sometimes they will look at it in from different angles, like artistic wise, maybe subject wise, whatever. But that's actually good, because whoever will sign up with you, he would know that you got an artistic vision, and they want to work with you into that.
No, absolutely. And so how would you say that these 4 short films have contributed to you, maybe taking on the next step? Are you thinking about directing a feature film now? Do you think that, you will take into consideration the types of stories that you told? Are you going to pursue a specific style? How do you feel have these short films contributed to your development?
Yeah, of course. Just like I said, even in the style that I'm writing, I was really struggling, and I'm glad because we have Yousef Ibrahim as a writer here. I was struggling to write, and I always thought the visual thing is I had more confidence into directing than writing, and all of those 4 I actually wrote. I was kind of pushed to write, because whenever I read something, it doesn't really speak to me, and I felt I need to learn to write, and then it got I think I got better. That's why I wrote my feature film, and it's gonna be funded by the cultural ministry in Saudi Arabia, and hopefully I'll shoot it next year. So basically, when I did my very short movie, it was shown as a opening film in Dammam Film Festival, and that's where I met all the Saudi filmmakers, and I looked at their work, they looked at mine, And the second film I did, because I met the locals and I worked with them into making my second. When I made my second, and so on, it's like and also I figured out my style during those 4 milestones. So it's actually, yeah, it's really contributed from every angle possible, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And of course, best of luck to you. And I think that it's really important. Short film is like the sandbox where you can experiment with different styles, where you can experiment with, different, visual, or genres or narrative styles, as we mentioned. And I think that, of course, the natural next step in terms of progression is your feature film. So I really look forward to seeing that, hopefully sometime soon, post-pandemic.
Yeah.
So just going back to you, Yousef, and I'd like to frame that question. In your experience, of course, you had written a number of projects previous to this, and how would you say, and this is maybe one of the projects that has gone out and done really well internationally, obviously. Do you feel that you've been able to embed, or rather, like the style that you wrote this film in? Is this something that you feel will contribute to your style going forward, or the type of story or the type of genre? Is this something that's going to become more maybe your specialization as a writer?
Well, I'm trying to do so because I think now it's time to just focus on one genre or two maximum. So mostly I'm writing in drama. I'm writing about some, I would say, big ideas, death in life, happiness, things like this. So I think this is yes. What actually attracted me from the beginning was this, that the style, the idea, the way I'm thinking that it can be useful for this kind of story. So yes, I think I will go in this direction, but mostly I would go more in our local society. So I'm doing more Emirati films. I'm not sure that I will do another pan-Arabic movie again. I think I have to focus in UAE culture.
Well, I think that there's really a lot of stories to tell in Emirati culture. I think that maybe there's been focus on a specific type of story or a specific type of style, that comes out of the UAE. For better or worse, I think it's a good idea to think about maybe creating a genre film, maybe creating about like films that speak about the society, that speak about the people, and speak about the history. There's really a lot to speak about, as I'm sure, of course, you're aware, and I hope that that's something that yes.
In Gulf, we have one thing which is good and bad at the same time. The good thing that any story is a new story. Any story is a new story, because actually even in sort of literature like novels and other things, we don't have that advance and that history of that. So any story is a new story. Any character is a new character. So we have a lot in the basket to find. So I sometimes I feel that some people are saying in Gulf the story is limited. It's not. We have a huge source and reservoir for stories. So I want to do that.
Yeah. No, of course you're absolutely right, and I think that this is the other thing relating to the question that we asked earlier about the type of stories that people expect you to tell. The audience is expecting.
I hope the type of story they're expecting me to write is a good story. That's it.
Sure. And especially a writer as distinguished as yourself, of course, we will always expect something that is of a high quality, something that we will be able to relate to on a human level, and so on. But what I'm speaking about specifically is the audiences from the outside world who expect to see a specific portrayal of women, to see a specific portrayal of maybe the patriarchy, to see a portrayal of the culture in a. I think you know what I mean. I think that there's a certain expectation, and I think that Arab cinema, hopefully, what independent filmmakers are trying to do is to really raise the ceiling and push back against this expectation.
And also, what you're saying about pushing back, which means that because I want to present myself, I don't want to present myself through your eyes.
Yes.
You are not telling me whom am I. I want to tell you who am I. So that is. I think this generation, Mr. Mohammed, and he's younger than me, I think we need to push back. Like, for example, a country like Saudi Arabia has been bullied for a long time about women, about things, and that's not right. At least it's not right the way that they see it. And I think this new generation, they should actually push back and tell their own story the way they know it. And the other people should be open-minded to see the real story. Like somebody is telling you a rumor and you stick to that rumor, although that I'm telling you that it is a rumor and this is the truth, but you're still sticking in the rumor. So we want to know the truth.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And of course, we represent our own stories. We need to tell our own stories and to be, to be truthful. And I believe that there was an attempt by Amjad to kind of do that with his film, even though it's based on an existing kind of an existing story, and it was something that you developed together. I think that that's something that he tried to do, and I think that again, once you're honest and true to the story you want to tell, this hopefully translates, and it translates into this kind of appeal, even internationally. So moving back to you, Mohammed, and I think just to kind of frame our conversation a little bit. So this is your fourth short film. What would you say? And again, it's the fourth short film that you've sold, which is great. But with regards to this specific experience, what would you say the biggest lessons you learned were from this experience that you will take with you going forward?
I would say, and this could be an answer related to what you guys were talking about, is, in terms of making the experience, is not the subjects that like people had, like the world had expectations around us, and in some subjects we can talk about the same subjects again and again, like they do. I mean, they make films about slavery, racism all the time, but it's all depends on how you tell it. I mean, if you tell it in a way that it makes me feel like the maker is actually foreign to this land. He's very surprised at everything. He's in denial for everything. He's not like, the character grew up in this situation, and he understands this is very normal to him, even though maybe in the West they might find it foreign, which is actually foreign, as much as the West is foreign to me, right? So basically, if you make a story about women and social problems, yes, we do have some social problems, but not in a very portrayed and very political, or in the news, and the TV is very spectacle. It's very shallow. What we're trying to make is make a story with a conflict. And in this case, it was for me very simple, right? But in a very believable way, that even the local audience love it. They understand it. They see, yeah, I see myself, and we're sympathizing with the character, and we're actually in the Dammam Film Festival. A lot of people told me we were laughing at ourselves in 2005, and that's the goal that I want to achieve, and that's the lesson that I learned is, don't make a movie that's it's very direct to the whoever you want to have a message in, is actually just an experience, and the way you tell it, if it's believable and right, and talk about your social conflict, don't shy away. I mean, but push back from what, look at the real world and try to use it in your work. Don't look at the news, the Western news, and use it in your work. It's quite the opposite. They're not here, we are.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Well said, Mohammed. You said better than me.
And Yousef, just going to you, if you could tell us and just share with us what the biggest lesson you learned was from this whole experience, even from the very beginning as a writer to throughout production and distribution and beyond, and today where your film is. What's the biggest lesson and most valuable lesson that you've learned from this?
Personally, the lesson is that no matter how big is your dream, it's achievable. That's the personal. By the way, the movie now it's nominated for Oscars. I'm not sure what will happen, but anyways,
Fingers crossed.
yes, that's good actually. But in professional way, actually, it changes my way of my creative process and writing, and that is very crucial. That's very radical for a writer. I just learned
How
that.
so?
Well, I cannot, yeah, because it changes my habits most, like the habits of writing. And I can't go details but it changes. And I learned that your creative process is very crucial, and it's part of you being successful. You could have been you could be a good writer, and you have talented, but the way you approach your stories is wrong, so you're not going anywhere. And from that process, and I've been in a lot of workshops, a lot of labs, so I learned a lot through the journey. Actually, that was a college for me, and now I feel more comfortable of writing. So that was the professional lesson for me in that movie.
Yeah. So you feel like it contributed to your creative process and to developing your creative process and maybe
Yes,
making.
I always find a way that there's something is wrong of what I'm doing. Something is wrong, and then actually I understand that the creative process started from you. Nobody will tell you how to write
Yeah.
or how to approach your writing, how to approach your character, how to develop your story. No one will tell you that. You should find it, and actually some people help me of finding that,
Yeah.
and that was a big discovery for me. Yes, that was with me for a long time, but I couldn't see it in this way. So now I can deal with it. Now I'm comfortable with using it, and plus of that, I learned a lot of tips on writing, developing, things like this. So now I'm more comfortable. No, anything I write after you will die. What's the name of the movie? You will die at 20. Okay, it is more comfortable. It's not easier. It's comfortable, and I was looking for this word for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine that
Once actually somebody told me something. Once you write one good story in your life, you cannot do a bad story ever. You just that will be your living. You cannot go down. So I think
Yeah.
he's right.
Yeah, and of course, that's very encouraging, for these prospective writers and people who are prospective, filmmakers who are about to go into the industry, about to make a feature film like Muhammad, which is, you see how your structure and the stories that you've told, has succeeded on a short film level. Mashallah, you managed to sell 4 of your films, and there's you can see them on Netflix. You can see one of them on Netflix. So I would imagine that this is some level of success, and hopefully with your feature film now, it's going to be something that is an extension of your craft rather than just an independent one-off kind of effort, right?
Yeah. I mean, like approaching the feature film was kind of very, very different for me than in the short film. In the short film, even though I had too many potentials in there, but I had to educate myself for the feature film, and I spent time like reading about it, trying to analyze the feature film structure, and even take courses into that. And that's why I admire You'll Die at 20. It was very well written and well done, and I loved it. I just watched it last week, and I really admire what I've seen. You can tell when you watch the movie, it's well made, and it's in every moment in it. And there was like a lot of sit up and payoffs, and it's all connected. Yeah. So I loved it. So I was watching the movie. I'm actually learning. I'm learning. When I watched You'll Die at 20, I was trying to learn as well. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And I think you learn a lot from watching films from your region, and how is it told.
Mm.
Because it speaks to you and you can reflect on yourself. Because we're very, I would say, we're very saturated with Western cinema. We know
Yes.
every famous film director style. We understand it. We're there. I mean, in terms of so how about the other side of the Arab cinema, and how is it done and how is it different? That was very interesting.
Yeah. And what a way
Yes,
to
like
conclude.
Mr.
Yeah.
Muhammad, like Mr. Muhammad said actually about if you see a movie from your region, you will learn from it. And I think one of the movies that was actually inspired me, and you actually mentioned that before, Deep.
Mm.
And I actually had a very long conversation with Mr. Naji,
Mm.
and we talked and talked and talked. And I love this movie. And it's one of the movies, even internationally, that I can see it 100 times. I never get bored. I love it.
Mm.
So, like Mohammed said, when you see a movie from your region, maybe you will learn more because it's related to you. You know things, so you know what's going right and what's going wrong. In that sense, you will have it more obvious to you. So
Yeah.
this is one of the my inspiration. Deep. If you
Yeah.
know Naji, just say hello to him.
I do, yes, I do. I do know Naji, yeah. I will for sure. Okay, so I guess this brings us, unfortunately, to the end of the talk. We could have talked for another hour or two, I think. It's really a pleasure to speak to you both and to be in your company and for you to share your experiences with us. Genuinely, it was a pleasure to talk to you both. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And for those of you at home, thank you for watching, and thank you for attending the screenings, for attending the talks at the Sharjah Film Platform. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you, everybody, and have a lovely day.